Good afternoon, producer Susan. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jerzee Joe. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. How's the lawn mowing project coming?
So the thermostat has officially hit 80 degrees as of today.
Uh-huh.
And because I had some forethought, I did mow the lawn on Sunday when it was in the 60s, because who wants to mow the lawn when it's in the 80s?
Gotcha. All right. All right. You want to hear what we're going to talk about today?
Sure, what's on the agenda?
All right. Well, today's June 2nd. It's 2 days after the attack in the Pearl Street Mall. But we're not going to talk about that because everybody else has talked about, and this is the situation with Jersey Joe and its news and perspective you won't hear on TV. So we're not going to spend any time talking about the flamethrower attack in Boulder. By the way, the other thing I'll say about that, don't you think if the Boulder City Council had made the Pearl Street Mall a flamethrower-free zone, that would have prevented the attack?
Yeah, just like all these gun-free zones prevent gun attacks.
You mean it wouldn't stop a fanatic from using a flamethrower?
Unfortunately not.
Well, then, if that wouldn't make them a flamethrower-free zone stop him, why would a gun-free zone make people fanatics with guns
Yeah,
stop?
it doesn't.
It doesn't. All right. By the way, our quote of the week this week is actually from our Denver talk show host, the name of Mandy Connell, about some recent Colorado gun legislation. So we're going to talk about that. Stupidest thing I've heard a week. We actually have three contenders this week, and you're going to get to pick. The
Okay.
first, the first is about two college-age girls trying to answer a very simple math driving question. The second is about a store that got fined $16,000 for selling some toy guns. And the third is about a new Colorado law that mandates that health insurance companies and Medicaid insurance cover the cost of breast augmentation for men who have decided to transition to women, but does not require the same level of coverage for real women seeking the same procedure. In our health minute, this may appeal to you. I understand you drink a lot of coffee, right?
I do drink a lot of coffee.
Well, we have a 30-year study out of Harvard that has found that drinking coffee is very beneficial for women, much better than drinking tea, and we'll go into that. I sent it to you. You probably didn't have a chance to read it though, did you?
I didn't read no, I didn't.
Okay,
Sorry.
okay. All right. We'll tell you what happened to a 33-year-old woman in Virginia when she saw a 72-year-old man who was simply wearing a MAGA hat. I think they were out in a public park or a shopping mall or outside someplace. And what she did when she saw the MAGA hat and she didn't like it. In another story you didn't hear on the evening news, we'll tell you about an illegal immigrant who killed a woman in Texas when she hit the kayak the woman was paddling with a jet ski that she was operating. Once again, we have a clip of our favorite Senator John Kennedy questioning a Biden judicial nominee about some of the things he had written in the past. Time permitting, we'll play a clip of an overweight kid literally threatening to blackmail her mother into buying her junk food in a grocery store. And we'll ask you what you would have done if it was your kid. And our taxpayer relief shot comes to us from Philadelphia, where two armed men who had just robbed a Dunkin' Donut store encounter an armed customer. Um, for once, it's not Texas, it's Philadelphia and a Dunkin' Donut store. All right. So here's our quote of the week from Denver talk show host Mandy Connell. She said, by the way, Colorado just passed a law that says if you want to buy just a simple semi-automatic pistol, nothing special, 9 millimeter pistol, whatever, you have to jump through all these hoops. You have to go take a 12-hour course. Then you have to apply, and it's just incredibly. You have to pay all these fees. So here's her take on that law. She said, "Congratulations to Colorado Democrats and Governor Jared Polis for passing a gun bill that effectively disarms poor people and creates a slew of fees people must pay before they can exercise their Second Amendment rights." Now, when I read this bill, not only is it the money, you have to pay like $150 just to take the course. It's a three-night or three night course. It's a total of 12 hours. A lot of poor people don't have, they don't own a car. They can't get to these after-hour sessions. They can't afford the 150, which is on top of the price of the gun, by the way. And plus, you have to take shooting tests. So, this is going to add the test, the time, the travel back and forth. It's going to easily add $300 and 12 hours worth of time. So if you were a poor, remember Supreme Court outlawed, remember, you know what a poll tax it was?
Yes.
That
Hmm.
was a tax they used to charge to have to vote. The Supreme Court said,
Yeah.
hey, that's non-constitutional. You can't put financial obstacles in the way of people trying to exercise their constitutional rights, which was
Mhm.
voting. Well, in my mind, this is no different than a poll
Yeah.
tax, and it disenfranchises poor people because, if a poor person, let's say if you want to buy a decent gun, it's going to cost you $400. Well, now it's going to be $700 plus 12 hours of time, plus the ability to travel back and forth, to these different classes.
Mhm.
So I think she's right. It basically disarms poor people. So I don't know. What's your thought on that? Is she right or is she not
Yeah,
right?
first of all, I thought that Colorado was a little bit more open with their gun laws.
Well, they used to be. They used to be.
Yeah. And although I do think that some states, so for example, in Pennsylvania, there is pretty much anybody who's not a criminal can walk into the sheriff's office, pay their $15 or maybe $20, which is basically your application processing fee, and you can walk out with your gun permit.
Well,
So
no,
in those
this
regards,
this is
I
not concealed carry. This is just to buy a gun. If you want to walk in the and
oh, yeah, no, because I think in some states they're too open, and there should be some like a safety class, but like
right.
an hour long. Do we
No,
need
this is
12
not to get
hours?
a concealed. This is just to walk in the store, say, "Hey, I like that
Yeah.
gun. I'd like
Wow.
this."
Okay.
This is just to buy a gun. Can you imagine
Yeah.
essentially a $300 fee to buy a
Just
gun?
to buy a gun. Yeah.
Well, that's what this is. So, what
Wow.
do you think about her
Yeah, no,
assessment?
that's absurd. You should, if you want to buy a gun, you should, if there's a waiting period, your 24-hour period, or however many, 3-day waiting period, and that's it.
Yeah, and you got to pay the $15 background check fee, which is pretty
Yeah.
standard all over. If you want to buy a
Yeah.
gun, you fill out the paperwork and you have to wait and they submit the paperwork. And I think it's $15 for the background fee.
Mhm.
Which goes to I think the state police in your state. But again, this is basically tacking on three, and the intent is clear. It doesn't make it any safer
Mhm.
because you still have to pass the background check. But
Mhm.
no, they want to just to buy and own a gun and keep it in your keep it in a
Yeah.
lockbox in your bedroom.
Sounds
They
like they're taking lessons from New Jersey.
they are taking lessons from. So that's our quote of the week. One more time. Congratulations to Colorado Democrats and Governor Jared Polis for passing a bill that effectively disarms poor people and creates a slew of fees people must pay before they can exercise their Second Amendment rights. So that's our quote of the week, and I think she's spot on. All right, stupidest thing I heard all week. Three contenders. Here's the first one. This guy's and these he's asking these two college age girls, and they're seriously college. These are not 14. These are college age girls. He asks them a very very simple question. Um, and let me play it, and let's see if you can answer this question.
Hour. How long does it take for you to go 80 miles?
Hang on.
2 hours.
Hang on. Let me
No.
let me restart this. Hang on. Here we go.
If you guys can solve this riddle right now, I'll give you $100. If you're driving 80 miles per hour, how long does it take for you to go 80 miles?
2 hours. No. It said like
If you're driving 80 miles an hour, how long does it take you to go 80 miles? That's the question.
Yeah.
2 hour, 30 minutes. No. Wait, how long is each mile? If you're going 80 miles the entire time, it has to be like 2:30. But how long is each mile? 2.5?
How long is each mile?
Yeah, I think. Right?
No, it's not. If you got
How long is each mile? One girl's saying two, the others are arguing whether saying no, it's 2.5 hours to go 80
Oh,
miles, traveling at 80 miles an hour.
yeah.
I assume you knew the answer to the question.
Yeah, an hour.
Do you know any people that are this stupid?
Uh, the decline. This is the decline of America.
Oh God, I know. All right, so that's contender number one.
I
Uh,
mean, this is the from like, Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader show?
and clearly they are. You wonder, could they even work as a cashier in McDonald's with that level? And these girls have obviously, they're at least, even if they're not in college, they clearly graduated high school. All
Yeah.
right. And you graduated high school and you can't answer the question, how long would it take you to travel? How long would it take you to travel 80 miles if you were driving at 80 miles an hour
It literally says in the equation 80 miles per
per
hour.
hour? Right. All right. Second one. So Walmart, like Amazon, you can go online and Walmart and buy a bunch of stuff. And like Amazon, Walmart does include stuff from third-party vendors.
Mhm.
Not everything you now, Walmart will handle the transaction. You will order from Walmart. You'll be billed by Walmart, or if you give them your credit card,
Mhm.
the charge on your credit card will show up as Walmart, but they're simply acting, they process your order. Well, New York State has this law that you can't sell realistic looking guns. Well, on their website, they has some vendors that offered, toy guns, air guns, these airsoft guns that shoot the rubber sponge
Mhm.
pellets. Well, apparently New York State found out that some of the vendors on the Walmart site, and again, this wasn't Walmart selling them, that some of the vendors on the site had sold and shipped like airsoft, realistic looking guns to residents of New York State. Well, the state of New York fined Walmart $16,000 because nine realistic looking plastic guns got shipped to New York State. Don't you think it would have been, hey, Walmart, tell your vendors to stop doing that? Don't you
Yeah,
think? No,
yeah. Somebody needs to be
16.
monitoring their website.
Anyway, and if you're a vendor, I mean, Walmart has so many vendors, they can't. Anyway, so that's contestant number two. Contestant number three is the law I mentioned. Is Colorado recently passed a law that requires health insurance companies and their own state-administered Medicaid program to cover the cost of breast augmentation surgery for any man who has decided to transition to a woman, but that same bill does not require health insurance companies and their Medicaid program to cover that same breast augmentation procedure for women. So of those three, the two girls that can't answer the question, Walmart getting fined for third-party vendors selling plastic guns, and Colorado paying breast augmentation surgery for men transitioning to women. Who do you vote for
Well,
being
I have an answer, but I'm curious as to why the augmentation doesn't go both ways. Why is it only one way? Why is it not both ways?
that's they felt that gender trans women, I guess, reserves, they should be they want to make it easier for people to transition. So
But why not go both ways? Why
I
can
don't
a
I don't
man transition to a woman, but why can't a woman
you
transition to
would
a
you would
man?
have to ask the Colorado legislature. I can't
That's
answer.
interesting that it doesn't go both ways, but I'm gonna go with the women who don't know how fast or how far you can go in
No, how long it takes to
yeah,
travel 80 miles at 80
80
miles an hour?
miles in an hour.
Okay. All right. Listeners, if you wanna send me an email, just send me an email to Joe at jerseyjoe.com. Just remember to spell Jersey Jerzee, Joe at Jersey Joe. You tell me which one of those three you think is the stupidest thing you've heard all week. All right. This is for you, the coffee drinker. So Harvard just released the results of a 30-year study that showed that where they found that consuming moderate amounts of caffeine can help you live longer. Scientists from Harvard want to see if the caffeine source matters. So they tracked the midlife coffee, tea, cola, and decaf coffee consumption of 47,000 female nurses over a 30-year period. So talk about a well done study. Um, so in the 30-year follow-up, out of those 47,000 nurses, about 3,700, about 7% of the women met the criteria for healthy aging. That was defined as living past the age of 70, being free from 11 major chronic diseases, and having no troubles with physical function, mental health, or cognitive memory. So, roughly 8% of the 47,000 nurses who had lived past age 70 were free from, things like arthritis and heart disease and,
Interesting.
dementia. And it turned out that they all drank approximately 2.5 cups of coffee every day.
Interesting.
So, how many cups of coffee do you drink in a typical day?
I've cut way back. I'm down to about 4 cups a day.
Okay, so you'd put the. By the way, they also found that caffeine from soda didn't have the same effect.
Yeah, and I don't drink. I don't hardly drink any soda at all. I drink tea, especially in the wintertime. I drink a lot of herbal tea, but that
Uh,
doesn't have caffeine in it. So
yeah. Well, if anybody wants to read the full study, it'll be on the website. Give
yeah,
producers in a couple of days. But the full study is there that drinking 2.5 cups of coffee a day, consistently, can help women age better. Okay.
yeah. So I'm consistently at 4 cups a day.
All right. So you're well over the 2.5 cup average. All right. So let's move on to the 33-year-old woman we're attacking this. So a woman named Laura Garrett, age 33, I'm sorry, this was in Florida, was arrested by the Largo Police Department on Tuesday for battery on a person older than age 65. Now, this is good because the penalty she's going to suffer because it was a what they call protected class.
Mhm.
If you attack somebody who's 40, the penalty's X, but if you attack somebody who's older than 65, it's X plus. Um, she was charged with a battery on a person older than 65, battery on a police officer, and obstructing or resisting an offer without violence. Um, she admitted that she approached a man who had been not been publicly identified at a Northeast Park and Paw, and she saw him wearing his MAGA hat and proceeded to ask him about Donald Trump and why he supports him, according to the arrest affidavit. The two got into an argument. At some point during the confrontation, she was holding a can of soda. She proceeded to pour the can of soda she was holding over his head, and as he turned, she threw the can at him, hitting him in the back of the head. The arrest report said. Um, After being, as the she was the arrest was going on, the report states that Garrett potentially dropped to the ground when officers put her in handcuffs, and then when the officers tried to escort her to the front of the park, she wrapped both her legs around the officer, causing him to fall. The officer's knee was bruised during the incident, which prompted the second battery charge. So, what do you think of a liberal woman who was who go gets violent when she sees somebody wearing a MAGA
Why
hat?
can't people just have like a constructive conversation? Like, why
Yeah,
why do you support Donald Trump?
yeah.
Have a conversation with the man.
Or agree to disagree, or you do
Why
you.
does it need to like immediately go to violence?
By the way, it is rare that I see a conservative attack a liberal just because they disagree. Now,
Yeah.
has it ever happened? Yes. But I see
Yeah,
so many of these
absolutely.
things where liberals get violent, um, you know, uh, and this is just, one of dozens that I've read about. Um, so yeah, so good for the police. Anyway, so she's been arrested, and that's how she reacted to the guy that held a different political view than her. Now,
I mean, these are the things that are supposed to make America great is that we can have differences of opinion and have conversations, but
yep, but not in this case. Whatever happened to tolerance, right?
Mhm.
So I guess
I agree to disagree.
yeah, agree to disagree. You do you, I'll do me. Okay, even
Yeah.
if you want to call the guy a name like you're a jerk, you're an a-hole, whatever. But come on, you pour your soda in the guy and then
Yeah.
when he turns,
Because what are we in kindergarten?
you throw the empty can at the back of his head. Well,
Hmm.
good for her. I hope she spends a little time in jail, more than a little time. Anyway, um, so we call this the situation. Let's move on to our next topic. We call this the situation with Jersey Joe news and perspective. You don't hear on TV. Well, here's a story I'm going to guarantee you didn't hear on TV. Down in Texas, a young woman who had been accepted into the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, she was out on a lake on a kayak just by herself, paddling a kayak on a lake in Grapevine, Texas. Well, there was a jet ski driven by woman Alejandra something Gonzalez. Um, and without looking, I don't know if she had been drinking, but she ran over the kayak with her jet ski at full speed, killing this 18-year-old female kayaker. And she immediately, instead of rendering aid, she immediately turned to shore, ran the jet ski on shore, jumped up into a waiting car, and fled the scene. And of course, she was an illegal alien. Did you hear about that in the news?
I didn't hear about that on the news, but you did send me the article link. I read it, and it was almost sounds like it was done intentionally.
So that my question, but one of my questions is, yes, it's tragic, and it seems like every week we're talking about an illegal alien,
Hmm.
killing. We had the Lincoln Right, we had the nurse, we had the 12-year-old girl down in Texas. I mean, how many times have we had these so far
Yeah,
this year, right?
yeah. You hear
But
about things like this on the news every week. That
well, you don't hear about them on the news unless
oh,
you're watching Fox.
yeah,
So again, this is the well, I'm going to say we've done a dozen of these. We're
hmm,
what, 21 weeks into the year, and we've
yeah,
done a dozen of these so far.
hmm,
Rarely do you hear about, and I know you didn't hear this one because trust me, I checked when I went on the Google and searched. There was nothing. CBS, NBC, ABC, CNN. This didn't make any of
hmm.
them, nor did any of the other ones we talked about. So um, you'll hear about them here, but you won't hear them on the news. All right.
And even, if it had been an accident, which I have this feeling that it wasn't an accident, like why, like you said, why would you not stop and render aid?
No, she
Why run
maybe
away?
well, maybe she knew that she was if she stopped and they questioned her, she'd get deported. Maybe that's why she
Yeah.
ran. But it's like, oh, so she hit her. She knew she hit her, but she just turned the jet ski to shore, ran it up on the beach, jumped in a car and fled. That was her reaction to hitting. And I don't know if she knew the woman was dead or drowning or whatever, but she didn't care. She just fled the scene. Finally, the cops caught her, but that's again a story you didn't hear in the news. All right. Let's move on to my favorite senator, and let me set the stage. This is a confirmation hearing for a Biden judicial nominee, a guy named Benjamin Cheeks. He's a black man. That Biden had nominated him as for a federal judgeship, and this is our favorite Louisiana senator, John Kennedy, who is a Harvard Law School grad, questioning this Biden judicial nominee about his qualifications and impartiality to be a federal judge. So let me back this up, and here we start this off.
2019, you remember writing an article for a publication, the title of the article, excuse me, the title of your article in which you say you didn't take a position was called The Federal Dungeon Part 2, Court Proceedings. You remember that?
I do.
Okay. And you were talking about it was then under President Trump, not President Biden. The Department of Justice then had a zero tolerance for illegal entry into the United States, because that, of course, is the law. And this is what you said about that. Quote, technically, the law was broken, but these particular defendants, poor, hungry, hardworking, and not dangerous, deserve a pass from prosecution. End quote. Saying that illegal immigration should not be criminalized is a position, is it not?
It is. What I'd like to add is that everything that I wrote while I was an advocate, not a sitting judge.
Oh, I see.
I was
the difference. Did you mean it when you wrote it?
When I wrote it,
did you mean it?
I meant it when I wrote it, because
okay, but you don't mean it now.
I do not mean it now.
So if you
right
take
now.
off your advocate hat today, do you have your advocate hat on today?
I am no longer an advocate. I'm a sitting magistrate.
Okay,
judge.
so you don't tell the truth when you're an advocate, but you do when you're not. Is it okay to lie if you're an advocate?
I don't follow the question.
I think it's pretty clear, and I think you follow it. You've taken a lot of radical positions, Judge.
So what do you think of my favorite senator that time?
Yeah, I think I don't know if it was Andy Pate or John Rush said that. I love how he comes off as a country bumpkin, but boy, is he smart as a whip.
Harvard Law School grad. All right. I'm going to move on. Now, this is a video of a young girl in a grocery store, and she's wearing almost look, and overweight girl. She looks to be about 12. She's a big girl. She's overweight. She's wearing what looks like to be a onesie pajama. I mean, totally inappropriate, for being in a grocery store with a mother. And she wants some junk food, and her mother says no. And this young girl literally threatens her mother and says, I'm going to do this and tell people you're beating me. And she's literally blackmailing her mother. It's a little hard to hear, but this 12-year-old girl in a onesie pajama is threatening her mother, threatening to try to get her mother arrested in the store. Here we go. I'm going to back this up.
No, you just want me to buy you random in this airport on the screen. To everybody that you kidnapped me, if you don't buy me something. If you did that, one, $1,000,000. Okay.
She just said, it was hard to hear. She said, if you don't buy me something, I'm going to scream that you kidnapped me. I'm going to tell everybody that if you don't buy me something, I'm going to tell everybody that you kidnapped me. And then she starts a countdown, 1, 2. So listen to it again.
You just want me to buy you random in this airport on the screen. To everybody that you kidnapped me if you don't buy me something.
If you did that,
One,
Amelia, don't.
two.
Okay. Listen, I will. I'll buy you whatever you want. And yeah, you too. Wait, hold on, please stop. Wait. Just wait. Stop.
And now the girl's proceeding to load up her arms with all sorts of junk food, candy and potato chips off a rack.
Listen, yeah, you throw a fit. These kinds of things. You throw a fit about first class, and I wasn't even supposed to take you to Las Vegas. Oh, yeah. Amelia Rose, give me that. Give me it.
No.
Give me it.
No,
Amelia, we're gonna get in trouble. Okay, stop. Don't. Listen.
She's threatening to scream for help in the middle of the grocery store.
We just need to talk. Stop. I already stop. Amelia, stop. Do you understand how much money? Oh my God, okay, I can't do this. Do you understand what I had to do to get you here?
So, if you were that girl's mother, what would you do?
Oh, that wouldn't have happened. That would not be tolerated.
How far gone is this relationship that this
And
girl
clearly, this is behavior that's been going on for a while. This is not a one-time or a first-time thing.
If that was my daughter and that she tried for me, we would have left the store that minute. And if she wanted to scream, I would say, go ahead and scream. And you're going to your room, and the only time you're going to see the sun for the next month is through your bedroom window.
Yeah, clearly this is not a first offense, or
No. This girl has got her mother completely buffaloed. This is not a healthy relationship. And if you want to see the video, it's hard to hear, but when you look at this overweight pig of a little girl threatening her mother.
Well, and that you have to blame the parents for that too, because it's the parents' responsibility to make sure that your children are eating
healthy,
appropriate food.
Yep, and clearly this girl hasn't been doing that. So
yeah, so I blame the mother for that too.
All right. Hey, how much time we got left?
You got like 7 minutes.
All right. I didn't have this on the schedule, but there was a story we talked about. There was a list that came out last week about the 30 worst colleges in the United States. And what they did is they looked at, well, first of all, these are colleges nobody ever heard of. One you might have heard of, like West Virginia State University. But what they did is they looked at how much tuition was, they looked at graduation rates, and then they looked at the earnings potential of the people who did graduate. And for most of these colleges, the graduation, well, first of all, the lowest tuition was like 20 grand a year, somewhere like 40 grand a year. They all had graduation rates less than 50%, and none of them had average earnings greater than $35,000 a year. Does Penn State publish, average starting salaries of their graduating class?
I'm sure that they probably do.
I know. By the way, all the engineering schools, my alumni, New Jersey Institute Tech, but all the engineering schools, if you graduate from a decent engineering school these days, they're all starting in the $70,000 a year. Starting.
Yeah.
Some of these schools, the alumni are reporting 6 years after graduation, they're making $33,000 a year. So when young people are looking at, and parents, if you've got kids looking at schools, you ought to create a matrix and says, okay, what's it going to cost me to go to this school for 4 years? What's the chances that I graduate? And if I do graduate, what is my most likely earning potential? And if your tuition is going to be 5 or 6 times your tuition and housing, is that a school you want to go to?
Yeah, I mean, and there's nothing wrong with going to, I'm an advocate of learning beyond high school, and whether that's a community college or a VOTEC school, there is nothing wrong with going to a community college. You can get a decent education for a cheap price, or a much cheaper price than a state school, and still get a quality education.
Yeah, and didn't we talk about 2 weeks ago about the companies that are offering high school juniors?
Yeah.
$70,000 a year to start, guaranteed.
Yeah, so you need to put, like you said, you need to do this matrix and what is my tuition versus what is my earning potential.
Yeah.
And if you can only afford to go to community college, that is okay. Go to your community college and get a degree.
And in fact, a lot of places you can go to community college and then you can do your last 2 years at a state. I know
Yeah.
in New York State, you can do 2 years at community college and then, transfer over to State University of New York or,
Yeah.
another great way to do it. Anyway, so
And you'll save thousands of dollars and still get a quality education.
tens of thousands of dollars, and don't pick a school where less than half the freshmen graduate and where their earning potential is under $35,000 a year when
Yeah.
they graduate. It's just, it's insane. There's no,
And
so,
we talk about how many times we talk about on this show VOTEC schools, these kids that are graduating from a VOTEC school, which also is, fairly inexpensive. They're making six figures as a HVAC technician or electrician or a
Yep.
plumber
Yep.
because they have a skilled job.
And they'll have a job for life, by the way.
Yeah.
If you're a decent electrician, decent welder, decent HVAC, you have a job for life.
Yeah.
Diesel engine technician, job for life. All right. Let's move on to our taxpayer relief shot. So why do we call them taxpayer relief shot? Well, here's the sheriff of Santa Rosa County, Florida. All right, here we go.
Somebody's breaking in your house, you're more than welcome to shoot them in Santa Rosa County. We prefer that you do, actually. Hopefully, you'll save the taxpayers money.
And since we have a little time, let's move on to Sheriff Grady Judd. There we go.
But we have received information in social media that some of the criminals were going to take their criminal conduct into the neighborhoods. I would tell them, if you value your life, you probably shouldn't do that in Polk County, because the people of Polk County like guns. They have guns. I encourage them to own guns, and they're going to be in their homes tonight with their guns loaded. And if you try to break into their homes to steal, to set fires, I'm highly recommending they blow you back out of the house with their guns.
All right, and we have some new listeners that have joined recently. And the reason we call them taxpayer relief shots is that if the police come and arrest a thug, first he gets a court-appointed attorney, which is, it's going to cost $200,000 for a jury trial. And then to put a thug in jail is about $80,000 a year. So if the police arrest it, if he survives the burglary, whatever the crime, gets arrested, gets a trial, and gets sentenced to jail in 10 years, that costs the taxpayers $1 million. So when the good guy or good woman shoots and kills the thug, you just save the taxpayers $1 million on average. It could be more, it could be less, but $1 million is a good number, which is why we call them taxpayer relief shot. So in this case, you're as a coffee drinker, you go to Dunkin' Donuts?
Oh, that's I prefer Dunkin' over Starbucks.
That's your favorite place. Well,
yep.
Here's two armed thugs go in and rob a Dunkin' Donuts, but after they've completed the robbery, they encounter a customer who is also armed. Here we go.
Police were called to a Dunkin' on East Roosevelt Boulevard just after 5 a.m. today for a report of a man shot and killed in that area. Now, the manager of the store says this all started as a robbery. Action News reporter Mandy Connell is live for us at the scene. So, Maggie, you learned some new information on this.
John, it's a sprawling scene. It started here inside this Dunkin' Donuts this morning with a robbery inside of the cash register, but also of those who were sitting inside enjoying their morning coffee. It spilled out here, and that's where you can see these evidence markers still on the ground, actually pouring out into this alleyway. There's more along this area. This is where we're told that one of the robbery suspects was shot by someone he was trying to rob.
Was over there illegal.
Yeah, so after they left, they tried to rob a customer, but they picked the wrong customer.
Paula woke up to police officers at her front door and homicide detectives out back.
The cops hanging my door, and they told me not to open the back door because it was a crime scene.
Behind her home, along the alleyway in the 2600 block of Eldridge Street in Mayfair, police were called out to reports of a robbery at around 5:30 this morning. Right around the corner, the manager at this Dunkin' tells us two armed men came in to rob the store and the customers inside. He says when they ran out, an armed customer followed behind and fired shots, killing one of the alleged robbers. At the scene, along with bullet casings, money was scattered and collected into evidence.
I couldn't imagine that happening in my house. No idea. I lived here for so long. Never happened things like that before here. And then the guy just dead in my door.
Police have not released information of who the victim is, but for Paula, she's grateful she didn't enter into the crosshairs right in her own driveway.
I was supposed to leave into work in the same time the guy was here. So I don't know if God's planned that, but I just changed my mind yesterday to park in the front. So I'm glad I did.
We are still waiting to learn more details about who that gunshot victim is and if there was another assailant with him at the time during this robbery. We haven't heard of any charges filed by Philadelphia police. We're live in Mayfair. Maggie Kent, Channel 6, Action News.
So there we go. What do you think of that one?
You know, in this world of tap and pay, and I gotta say, as a regular Dunkin' user, I use the mobile app, so I don't even go in and use my credit card. I place my order on my phone and I run in. I can't imagine that they had more than a couple $100s in cash in their cash register.
Yeah,
and I think that's probably true. You could say that of probably any fast food establishment these days. They probably don't have more than a couple $100. And is it worth it?
Yeah,
for a couple $100?
I read a statistic. There's this big thing about the penny being discontinued.
Yeah.
And I read somewhere that less than 23% of transactions these days are cash. And among young people, under age of 30, it's less than 12% of people under 30 use cash anymore.
I rarely have cash in my wallet.
Okay. Well, anyway, so the guy, the F around and find out, FAFO. Well, this thug did an FAFO. He effed around and found out the hard way. Anyway, anything you want to add before we sign off?
Yeah, Jerzee Joe, I understand that there's an important holiday coming up this weekend.
Jesus,
on Saturday.
Nothing comes to mind.
Not a big celebration on Saturday.
Oh yeah, I got a birthday coming up.
It's a big one, isn't it?
Just another. We're not going to talk about how big that one is. All right. So yeah, 39. I'm celebrating the anniversary of my 39th birthday this Saturday. All right. All right. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for listening to this podcast, for giving up 30 minutes out of your busy day to listen to me ramble on about things I found of interest and important. And I hope you found them as interesting and important as I did. And if so, hope you keep listening in the weeks and months to come. If you want to see some of the materials and the story links you heard me talk about today, you can find them on the Jerzee Joe website at jerzeejoe.com. Just remember to spell Jerzee, J-E-R, as in Robert, Z as in zebra, E-E, Jerzee. And again, if you want to send me an email with a comment, question, or you want me to send you any of these topic links, any of the videos, just send me an email to joe@jerzeejoe.com. And with that, Producer Susan, unless you have anything else to add, we will sign off and talk to you next week. All right?
I hope you have a good birthday.
I thank you for that. Talk to you next week. Bye-bye.